Speaker, can I join the Prime Minister in paying tribute to Guardsman Carl Whittle of 1st Battalion, the Grenadier Guards, and Sergeant Lee Davidson of the Light Dragoons. Both of them showed the utmost courage and bravery, and our thoughts are with all their family and friends. Can I also join the Prime Minister in celebrating today the renaming of the clock tower as the Elizabeth Tower? It was done with all-party support. It is a fitting tribute to the service that Her Majesty the Queen has shown to our country. Mr. Speaker, the fall in unemployment today is welcome, but all of us will be concerned that the number of people out of work for more than a year stands at 904,000, its highest level for 17 years. Does he agree with me this is a particularly troubling statistic, because the longer someone is out of work, the harder it is for them to get back into it, and the more damage that is done to them, their families, and indeed to our economy?
Now, I absolutely agree with him about the dangers and the threat of long-term unemployment. I think it is worth to put in front of the House the full figures today, because not everyone will have seen them. Unemployment is down by 7,000. Employment is up by 236,000 over the quarter. I think it is significant because it's a real-time live figure, and that is the claimant count. The number of people claiming unemployment benefit in August was down 15,000. And as I've just said, when you look at the private sector jobs number, which is vital when you think we need to rebalance our economy, there are over 1 million net new private sector jobs over the last 2 years. Now, he's absolutely right that the long-term unemployment figure is disturbing. That is what the work programme is designed to deal with. Now, the work programme we've got up and running within a year. It's helped already 690,000 people. And the key part of it is that those who are hardest to help, people on the incapacity-style benefits and also who have been long-term unemployed, we pay the training providers more to help them into work, and that is the key for dealing with this problem in the time ahead.
He talks about the work programme, but not only is long-term unemployment at its highest level for nearly 2 decades, but over the past 12 months we've seen a 247% rise in the number of young people on the dole for over a year, and that is happening throughout the country. Mr. Speaker, isn't this the clearest evidence so far that his work programme just isn't working?
I don't accept that. First of all, on the youth unemployment picture, it is disappointing that youth unemployment is up 7,000 over the quarter, but of course the youth unemployment figures do include young people in full-time education. If you look at the picture of the number of young people in work, youth employment, that is actually up 48,000 over the quarter, so a more encouraging picture. In terms of the youth contract itself, that is now up and running. 65,000 young people have taken part in work experience programmes, which were criticised by some people sitting opposite and some trade unions, but actually within 21 weeks half of them have been taken off the unemployment register with proper work, and I think that's very encouraging because it actually means it's about 20 times more cost effective than the Future Jobs Fund that it replaced.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say to him, to all the young people looking for work around the country, that does sound like a rather complacent answer. And the reality is that because of his failure on long-term unemployment, borrowing, the key test he set himself, is up 25% in the first 4 months of this year. He is borrowing £9.3 billion more in the first 4 months of this year than last year. That's £1.6 million in the hour of Prime Minister's questions. Now, we gather today that the government may miss the overriding economic test that he set himself, which is that debt will be falling at the time of the next election. Isn't the fact that he's failing the very test he set himself the surest sign yet his plan's just not working?
Well, first of all, there's absolutely no complacency in this government over the issue of either youth employment or long-term unemployment. That is why we're putting so much energy and effort into the apprenticeship programme, and we've seen 457,000 apprenticeship starts in the last year, which is a record figure and something we want to build on in the years ahead with £1.5 billion invested. He raises the issue of borrowing, and this government in the last 2 years has cut the deficit by a quarter. But I have to say to him, if he's concerned about borrowing, borrowing, why does he have plans to put it up? There are many ways that you can reduce borrowing. The one way you can't reduce borrowing is to increase spending and increase borrowing, which is what he tells us to do.
Mr. Speaker, the reality that this Prime Minister can't get away from after 2.5 years is that borrowing is rising on his watch. That is the reality. Borrowing is up. Borrowing is up 25%, £9.3 billion in the first 4 months of this year. And maybe when the Prime Minister gets up to reply, he can tell us whether the reports this morning that the government is not going to meet its target that debt will be falling by the end of this Parliament are correct, or whether he sticks to that promise. The reality is he's failing the test he set himself, and it shows that Plan A is not working.
It is this government that has cut the deficit that we inherited by a quarter. That's what we have done in 2 years. Now, normally, Mr. Speaker, at this stage in the proceedings, I say that the party opposite hasn't got any plans. But on this occasion, I can reassure the House they have got some plans. They've got a new plan. It's called pre-distribution. I think that what that means is that you spend the money before you actually get it. And I think you'll find that's why we're the mess we're in right now.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell him what it's about. It's an economy that doesn't just work for a few at the top, but works for everyone else. And it's not about a Prime Minister who cuts taxes for millionaires while raising taxes for everyone else. And perhaps when he gets up to reply, he can answer the question which he so far hasn't answered. Is he going to be a beneficiary of the 50p tax cut?
This is an economy that's generated 1 million new private sector jobs. Now, I know he doesn't want to. I know he doesn't want to talk about pre-distribution, but I've done a little work, Mr. Speaker. I can tell him about his new guru. His new guru is called, I'm not making this up, the man who invented pre-distribution, he's called, I'm not making this up, Mr. They don't want to hear.
Order, the House. Order, members on both sides need to calm down. Let's hear the Prime Minister's answer.
I'm surprised they don't want to hear from their new guru. He's called Mr. J. Hacker. And Mr. J. Hacker's recommendation is that we spend an extra 200 billion and borrow an extra 200 billion in this Parliament. That is his recommendation. But in the work I've done, I've discovered his new book. It is published by Princeton University Press, and it's called The Road to Nowhere. He doesn't need to read it. He's there already.
Let me compliment you, Mr. Speaker, on such a butch answer from the Prime Minister. And what a week it's been for Mr. Butch, Mr. Speaker, because he's briefed against the new International Development Secretary, the former Transport Secretary. He was knocking back the claret while sacking the Welsh Secretary. And when it came to the Environment Secretary, Mr. Speaker, she was sacked because she was too old and replaced by a man who was older. Very butch, Mr. Speaker. The reality is this. The Prime Minister is going to have to answer between now and April, and he didn't answer the question as to whether he is going to get that top-rate tax cut, a tax cut for millionaires by millionaires. The reality is this. Their plan is failing. They stand up for the wrong people. Plan A is not working. He should change course.
On a day when we hear that this economy has created 1 million net new private sector jobs, all we have learned from the Labour Party is they have learnt nothing. They are still committed to the spending, the borrowing and the debt that got us into this mess in the first place. That's the truth, and they can't hide it from the British public.